This morning calls for a federal investigation after an explosive report saying state troopers treat asylum seekers inhumanely. Why do you think we haven't heard from the Biden administration on this?
Listen, that's a good question.
Congressman Joaquin Castro from the Capitol on another failure inside the Texas Department of Public Safety. A new bipartisan push to cut red tape for workers coming to this country.
I got to take this bill from 16, 17 members being co-sponsors to 160 members being co-sponsors.
Congressman Tony Gonzalez on what it will take to pass some immigration reform before the 2024 election. Also this morning, the backstory on why Jesse Jackson chose Dallas pastor Frederick Haynes to succeed him. Haynes tells us this morning he was hesitant at first. And another high-profile Texas Republican has decided not to run for re-election in the State House of Representatives.
Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley starts now.
Good Sunday morning. I'm Jason Whiteley. Let's begin the program here with the top political headlines happening across our state. Texas women were in a courtroom in Austin last week wanting clarity on when it is medically necessary for a doctor to give an abortion. These are women who had troubled pregnancies. They testified that doctors delayed medically necessary care because doctors were confused that they might violate the state's new abortion law. A Travis County judge now considering a request to put that law on hold until it is clear just when it is necessary to justify an abortion. A state senator will not be prosecuted for DUI after all. The Travis County District Attorney said there's not enough evidence to prosecute State Senator Charles Schwertner. Austin police arrested Schwertner back in February, but the DA is dropping the charges, saying there's not enough evidence to prosecute. Still, though, the senator did voluntarily agree to get alcohol counseling. And another high-profile Republican is retiring from the Texas House of Representatives. State Rep. For Price said he will not run for an 8th term in the House. He is a Republican from Amarillo. He held a number of leadership positions, including chairing 6 committees. Price is also one of the rural Republicans who opposes school vouchers and is now the 4th House member to retire from the Texas legislature. But we are starting this morning with a developing political story. The U.S. Department of Justice told Texas that razor wire along the banks of the Rio Grande is illegal. The Justice Department also said it might go to court to get those buoys removed from the river in Eagle Pass. You remember just a few days earlier, a Texas state trooper wrote an internal email saying his colleagues at DPS that they treat asylum seekers inhumanely. Congressman Joaquin Castro has been the most outspoken on this latest situation. Castro, of course, is a Democrat from San Antonio.
Congressman Castro, welcome back to the program. The Texas Department of Public Safety's Office of Inspector General, its investigative arm, is now investigating these claims. What do you expect to come from that state investigation?
These are not, fantasy or allegations from some bystander. This is a DPS trooper himself who works as a medic, who was writing an internal email about what he called inhumane practices. And so what I hope happens is I hope that Governor Abbott will stop those inhumane practices, these barbaric practices. And really, all of Operation Lone Star has been much more of a political stunt than anything else.
For our viewers who might not realize it, it is a federal responsibility to secure the border. Why do you think we haven't heard from the Biden administration on this?
Listen, that's a good question. And I'm not just going to reflexively defend the president here. The president needs to speak up on this issue. He needs to say something. The administration needs to take action. The Department of Justice needs to fully investigate this. The Department of Justice has been looking into Operation Lone Star for over a year, but has not put out any report about their assessment or whether they believe there are any civil rights violations, for example. So I think, of course, I have great respect for President Biden. I agree with him on a lot of stuff, but this is a place where the president needs to speak up.
Can the federal government do anything to stop this?
They absolutely could. The Department of Justice right now could issue a cease and desist order. They could go to court and pursue an injunction. They could file a lawsuit to stop this. The president can use his own bully pulpit to speak out and ask that Governor Abbott stop. At the same time, I want to be clear, we want the President of the United States, of course, to speak up. I want the federal government to take action, but there is one person who is responsible for this, and that is Governor Greg Abbott.
Last thing here, there's a state investigation. The Office of Inspector General is investigating from DPS. There are interviews like this with different members of Congress, different leaders in the area. But is this going to be anything more than a headline, do you think?
It's got to be, Jason, because these are, this is inhumane. This is barbaric. If it's only a headline, if we're not hearing about this next week or next month, if there's no action that is taken, if the president doesn't say something, then I think it reflects a failure of American society. It reflects a kind of moral failing, not just of Greg Abbott and others who are carrying this out, but if there isn't action taken by this administration, if there's nothing spoken by this president, then it's a moral failure of everyone, including Democrats.
Have you called the White House?
We've reached out. I said the other day that I spoke directly to the Secretary of State the night that the news broke. I read him the title of the article and read him the first paragraph. He expressed deep concern. He did say, and one of his assistant secretaries said, that they were aware of not those particular incidents, but the situation, that they were concerned with respect for human rights. They were concerned with the violation possibly of treaty obligations. But again, all of that has got to turn into action. All of that concern has got to turn into action.
Congressman, we always appreciate the time. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, now to the unbearable heat all across Texas right now. It's worth noting that solar and wind energy are really keeping our air conditioners on. Renewable energy contributing a third of all the power that we are using in Texas right now during this heat wave. Considering that fact, though, the question is this going to now prove some type of political point? Ian Mitra is the senior managing editor of the Texas Tribune in Austin. Ian, wind and solar once again proving their worth to everyone. What are the chances this changes any attitudes about it in Austin?
Well, look, you're looking at a summer where with an electric grid where we've only gotten about 1 day of a conservation warning, and so people are probably, what's been where we seemingly have like a daily demand, new records of demand. It's been an all-inclusive strategy here too. So I think there will be harder calls if something breaks down with the grid. But right now, I think people really are seeing that there is a benefit. Obviously, natural gas is still the primary driver of
Sure.
our grid. But certainly, I think people are really grateful to have the grid be as reliable as it has been this summer.
And of course, the Texas heat is really taking a toll on our prison system. And despite what you think about prisoners, the state, any state, has to keep prisoners in their custody, safe and healthy, along with staff as well. But lawmakers have really been hesitant to invest in air conditioners inside many of our Texas prisons. Is it just a matter of money?
Yeah, well, this is, and we're talking as there's tens of thousands of people in these facilities, these prisons across the state here. And, there was a proposal during the regular session about dedicating about $500 million towards cooling prisons. It fell apart in negotiations. It kind of passed through the House. And so, as this, really rough summer continues to drive through, and we're having, certainly another special session, as the heat comes and as other folks kind of demand this, it'll depending on how long the list is for the special session, this might be considered.
All right, thanks a lot. Back to you in just a moment here.
Coming up, a Texas Republican behind a bipartisan push to update our outdated immigration policies. Congressman Tony Gonzalez on the specific people his legislation would help. And the Reverend Jesse Jackson selects a Texas pastor to take over for him at the Rainbow Push Coalition. Why Frederick Haynes, though, was hesitant to succeed Jackson. Inside Texas Politics, back in a moment.
Welcome back to Inside Texas Politics. Neither Democrats nor Republicans really want to tackle immigration reform. They haven't for years. But a Texas Republican launched a new bipartisan push to take small steps to update our outdated immigration policies. Congressman Tony Gonzalez represents more of the U.S. border with Mexico than anyone else in Congress, and he took our call from the Capitol. Congressman Gonzalez, welcome back to the program. Last time we spoke with you, you said you wanted to start working on immigration reform, something Congress has kicked down the road for years, as you know. Just this week, you introduced the HIRE Act, the HIRE Act. It's a bipartisan bill. Tell our viewers what this would do if passed.
Yeah, Jason, thank you for having me back on. I'm excited about this HIRE Act. One, we've already got 16 co-sponsors. 17. We got another one today. We got 6 Democrats on it and 11 Republicans. 17 members of Congress coming together and putting their name on something doesn't happen very often. So I'm excited about it. Even more importantly, we got 30 outside co-sponsors, endorsees, if you will. U.S. Chamber of Commerce, American Farm Bureau, Texas Farm Bureau, National Immigration Forum, and some other groups as well. So it's a good start. It pretty much does 3 things. One, it takes work visas from 1 year to 3 years. It streamlines the process. There's a lot of red tape around these work visas. It streamlines the process. And the third thing is it highlights to American workers that some of these jobs aren't necessarily seasonal anymore. So it gives them an encouragement for American workers to apply for these jobs. I'm really excited about it. It'd be a lot of fun working on it.
And you're talking Democrats and Republicans there. Here's the last question on that topic. Going into 2024 election here, it's going to be contentious. You mentioned that right out of the gate. But do you expect any movement? Have you heard from leadership on whether it might get behind this, Speaker McCarthy or anyone else?
Yeah, look, leadership is going to be the last ones that jump in on the train to head down the tracks. All that means is I got to do my work. I got to take this bill from 16, 17 members being co-sponsors to 160 members being co-sponsors, from 30 outside groups endorsing it to 130 groups out endorsing it. So this thing has a long way to go. This is day one, but I am excited about it. I've had conversations with leadership. They understand how important it is. And you know what? Imagine if we could take one step towards immigration reform that tackles work visas. Why is this important to your audience? Well, if you're tired of waiting 30 minutes to get your beer, this bill can help you. If you're tired of waiting 2 weeks to see a doctor because there's a shortage of nurses, this bill can help you. If you're tired of waiting 2 months before your bathroom remodel, this bill can help you. So I think it does a lot of positive things, but there's a lot of work ahead. I'm excited to work with my partners.
Congressman, let me ask you about something else going on the border. That San Antonio Express News reporting recently that a state trooper, a medic state trooper, was saying that other DPS troopers were treating asylum seekers, migrants, inhumanely. I'm curious about your reaction to that.
Yeah, it's all very tragic. And Jason, I represent 423 miles of the southern border. It's a large stretch. And I have seen this crisis continue to spiral. And I've seen people die, honestly, every single week, die and get injured along the border. It's very tragic. I'm hearing a lot of terrible stories, and it needs to stop. Regardless of somebody's legal status, we should all be there to protect children, to protect the vulnerable, regardless of what is happening. So I'm confident that leadership, state leadership, the governor and others are, if this is indeed goes down that route, that it's going to be corrected. We can't allow that to happen. We are a nation of laws, but we are also a compassionate nation, and we need to make sure that we protect others. Going back to the HIRE Act, I would love for somebody to not have to step 1 foot in water in the Rio Grande. Imagine if they could come over legally instead of having to be smuggled illegally over the river, through trains, in these tractor trailers. Imagine if they could legally get a work visa and come over here legally for economic purposes. I think if we can pass this HIRE Act, it could solve a lot of problems.
Congressman, we appreciate the time as always. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Jason.
For a week now, a Dallas pastor has made national news. The Reverend Jesse Jackson chose Frederick Haynes to succeed him at the Rainbow Push Coalition. But what you have not heard is the backstory on how all this happened, how Haynes was hesitant to take on this big role at first. We spoke to Reverend Haynes on a recent trip to Washington, D.C. Reverend Haynes, congratulations, first of all. Can you tell us how all this unfolded last Sunday? Did Reverend Jackson give you a phone call ahead of time? And if so, what did he say to you?
Well, we've been in conversation, honestly, for 4 or 5 years. He first approached me about this during the NAACP convention in 2019. I was speaking there, and he asked me would I consider it. And so we have had conversations off and on since then. And then in April of this year, he was really putting the pressure on So we've been at this for a while.
You say putting the pressure on. Were you hesitant at all early on?
Well, I mean, first of all, Jesse Jackson is iconic. He's a living legend. He has done phenomenal work that has literally changed the world. And so given that, one would be less than sane to not feel some hesitancy. And so without question, I did have my reservations, even though at the same time, I've been a long time fan, even student of his, and have often worked with him and have been blessed by his tutelage. And so a part of me was, okay, this is Jesse Jackson. And then the other part of me was, oh, this is Jesse Jackson. And so it was, kind of easy to say yes.
I don't have to tell you what a tremendous honor this is, but why do you think that he chose you out of all the people he knows?
I'm still trying to figure that out. He's told me a few things, and so I'm still waiting for him to tell me some more. Because again, as you said, he knows so many people, he has worked with so many people, and I am just honored and humbled that he felt that I could, help to lead the organization and, walk in the legacy that he has established while standing on his, very strong shoulders.
The Rainbow Push Coalition is going to remain based in Chicago. You, of course, are the senior pastor at Friendship West Baptist Church in Dallas County. How are you going to manage this? Are you going to appear less at church in Dallas, or what's the plan?
No, I can't do that. One of the things that happened in our negotiations, Reverend Jackson was insistent that I stay at the church because, in his words, the church is a base of operation for all the Rainbow Push has always done. So why would I leave the base? As a matter of fact, I think one of the reasons that, he said that he was, tapping me to do this was because I was doing this kind of work without the Rainbow Push platform. And so Friendship West, aware of that, has basically celebrated this open door for a new and larger opportunity to have a larger platform in order to address injustices and build a nation characterized by justice, because that's what we've been doing ourselves for quite some time.
Reverend Haynes, congratulations to you. Thank you for the time.
Thank you very much for having me.
Coming up next, a big question in Austin. Can Texas senators really be impartial in the impeachment trial of Ken Paxton? A recent campaign contribution now raising new questions about that. The roundtable is ready for those questions when we return.
This is Inside Texas Politics with Jason Whiteley.
Time now for Reporters Roundtable to put the headlines in perspective. I am Mitra, back with us from Austin at the Texas Tribune. Bud Kennedy is a columnist at the Fort Worth Star-Telegram. Bernadine Steptoe, political producer at WFAA in Dallas. Let's start with you. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, as we all know, is going to act as the judge, the presiding officer in the upcoming impeachment trial of Ken Paxton. But Paxton's backers just gave him a $3 million donation. Not the first time they have done this, but it does raise the question again about impartiality and whether senators can be impartial to someone they know.
It's a continuing question with this whole trial about the impartiality. Ken Paxton, a former senator, worked with Dan Patrick. Obviously, his wife Angela Paxton doesn't have a vote, but will still sit in this trial. And so it's just that this doesn't add to this continues to add to the perception of questions about impartiality.
Bud?
Well, this is more contradiction of this trial. This is, they set all these rules like a criminal trial. The Senate imposed this really strict level of justice, saying that they have to find him guilty beyond a shadow of a doubt instead of just a preponderance of guilt. And yet they want to let the judge take $2 million in loans, $1 million donation. Is this a formal trial or not? Chief Justice Hecht, presiding Justice Keller should be presiding.
Bernadine.
Yes, you know what? Keep in mind, this is a trial, but it's also a political trial. And what comes with politics and money? And there's no way that the lieutenant governor is going to turn that down when he's saying that he is going to be partial. And that's what we just always have to keep in mind through the whole process. This is about politics.
But of course, the other big news is that explosive report from the San Antonio Express News about a state trooper writing an internal email saying his colleagues were treating asylum seekers inhumanely. The Department of Public Safety's Office of Inspector General has opened an investigation into this, but realistically, what do you expect to come from that investigation?
Well, you know, it's tough to say what the difference is between building a wall and putting boys down the middle of the river. But it is interesting to know that President Trump's administration considered doing this and decided that it was too cruel, that there was too much potential for injury or drowning as a result of the boys. I think the focus needs to be on the state policy and not on the individual troopers' claims.
Bernadine, you're making the face there, but do you think DPS is going to escape accountability again, especially as so many people are still critical after what happened in Uvalde?
I would be surprised because as you see now, especially Governor Abbott, they're not even taking responsibility. They're saying, okay, blaming Biden for what they're doing. So I would be surprised if there's some accountability, but I would definitely not be surprised if there isn't any accountability.
And quickly, why haven't we heard from President Biden on this?
I don't think any of us has an answer for that.
No one can say that one, Bernadine?
Well, I was just going to say, when he feels comfortable that, you know, let everything wash out and then he'll come in and say something.
All right, guys, thanks so much. We appreciate it. Thanks for watching as well. We're back next Sunday to take you inside Texas politics and hope you can join us then. Take care.